Hey guys, welcome back. So we just wanted to kind of get together and give some closing remarks, give some advice on what we're up to right now, in terms of the pre-med process, the applications, the MCAT, just to give you kind of an inside perspective on what we're dealing with, as students ourselves.
Yeah, so I guess I can get started. So just talking a little bit about my background and what I've done. Hi again, I'm Jason, by the way, and so far I've worked in a neurobiology lab on campus. So definitely, if you're a pre-med student, look for research opportunities on campus. I'm sure there are plenty. I do volunteer work at a clinic that's nearby. Again, I'm a medical assistant. Another easy thing to find and near you. You get good clinical experience and you get to meet some really interesting patients and you get to interact with patients, which is really exciting. Um, Also get involved on campus. I'm a leader of a club, Terps for Kids, that works with underprivileged or underserved children. Again, great opportunity. And I actually took the MCAT in January of 2023. I was studying for it from around August to January. So I guess that's a couple months. And I did that while I was taking classes. So yes, it was a little tough, but we make it work. And right now I'm in the application cycle. So I guess we'll talk about that after everyone gives a little bit of their intro.
Yeah, I can go next. I'm Sam, as I'm sure you guys know at this point. So some of the stuff I've done outside of this podcast is I actually got my EMT certification after our sophomore year, and that's something that I've always been very interested in. It's a great way to get clinical experience and really get hands-on patient care, as well as like a great skill set to have at all times, emergency medicine, or at least stabilizing. Um, so I rode in high school, but then I got injured, had to take a couple years off, and I finally came back to that. So that's something I've been doing over the breaks, as time has gone on. I also have some volunteering experience while I'm at school. I used to work with Meals on Wheels, which if you don't know, they help senior citizens basically get food for affordable prices. It's like $5, I think, and you get food delivered to you 5 days a week. And it basically is your breakfast, lunch, and dinner for $5, which was very helpful during the COVID pandemic since there's a lot of seniors who couldn't leave and family who couldn't even go and see them and help them. So this was a really great thing to be a part of. I'm also part of the friendship circle at home. I always try to go there when I can. It's working with special needs children. And also here we have it as well. Jason introduced it to me here. And it's really a great organization. No matter where you are, they're always just like the most welcoming, kind people to work with. And it's awesome. So then outside of that, I also took my MCAT recently. I'd done some of my content review in the summer and then took a little break since I had a hard semester, but then I studied over the winter and took it. And right now I'm currently in the process of applying to med schools.
Okay, so I guess I'll go next. My name is Sapir. So in terms of my experience here at school, I agree with Sam. Sophomore year, I got my EMT certification overseas. And as a part of that, you have to do 160 hours of volunteer work. And so how I did it was I kind of did it through a program. So that's a really easy and structured way to kind of get introduced to it. And then because I had my certification overseas, I had to take an exam to get it converted to US, which wasn't so bad. And then my other experience here on campus, I was a general chemistry TA, which is really good experience, one, in terms of actually getting to know the content really well, but also in terms of connecting with the professor above you, and really creating that relationship, so that you could use it potentially to work in a lab on campus or whatever it is. And then on top of that, I think capitalized more than anything on the volunteer experience. So every time I would go home, I would work really hard. I started an organization called Sports Stars, which is a basketball type of like volunteer, like you go work with people with special needs, similar to Friendship Circle, but more like you're coaching them, you're like having fun. And then similar vibe also, in something called avvocato overseas, where we work a lot with special needs people. And I'm also taking a 2-year gap year, so I can't give as much insight on on taking the MCAT and applying yet, but I was kind of hovering between PA and med, so I can give some more insight on that front.
Thanks, it's Pierre and Sam. Sam, so a question for you is, do you mind just talking a little bit about how you prepared for the MCAT, what resources you used, what's available? Maybe some people don't know.
Yeah, of course. So, there is a lot of information out there which can be very overwhelming at first, but I'd personally start by going to YouTube. They have a lot of great resources of other people doing a very similar thing where they're going through what they did. But for my personal experience, I think you're best off spending a month or two reading through the Kaplan books, except for their Psych Soc book, which is notoriously missing some critical information. And as a supplement to that, they have a Khan Academy, a whole set of videos, as well as a 300-page PDF document you could find. And when it comes down to content, that's really all you're gonna need. It's really just a matter of taking your time and actively reading rather than just trying to scribble notes. Every few pages, go back and try to restate to yourself what you just read. And if you forgot anything, then you just go and review it. I think that's a very useful strategy that's not really utilized by a lot of people, since they always feel like that they have to write everything down and have it all in front of them. But really what matters most is that it sticks in your head. So after that, I would spend a couple of months either doing Anki decks, which there's several good ones online that you could find, as well as UWorld, which, if you don't know what it is, it's basically a big question bank that works with the AAMC to have very similar style questions. It's all passage-based readings. And then after that, the AAMC, they have a lot of good materials for that last month when you want to start taking full-length practice tests, as well as having the most exam-like set of questions. They have a question bank of a couple thousand questions that you can go through, as well as I think 7 practice tests. And that is a really good indicator as where you're going to fall. So that's really my experience with studying for the MCAT and what I thought worked best for me, as well as a lot of my close peers. Do you have anything else to add, Jason?
I think you named some really great resources. The only other resources I would add are maybe, so Jack Weston is a website that has some like example practice problems and a practice card, cars is the critical analysis and reading section. So it has a practice passage every day. It's really important to do cars every day so you can try and get better and better. Cars is really difficult. It's something that I struggle with personally. So doing it every day is really important. You mentioned Anki. Anki is like a flashcard app, I guess. And there are some pre-made decks, so do not waste your time making flashcards. Definitely download. I use the Miles Down deck. Has like almost 3,000 cards, all in biology, chemistry, physics, and psychology. Definitely use it for the psychology, maybe less for the other ones. And again, just to reiterate what Sam said, like it's incredibly important to not just passively study, but to actively study, because you want to look at it once and then not have to look at it again. And if you learn, like, let's say physics first, you may not look at it again until you do practice problems, maybe like a month out. So it's very important that you continue to review. I personally use the Anki flashcards to review the content that I learned while I was reviewing content. So that was kind of my method and my madness. So Pierre, you haven't taken the MCAT yet, but do you have any questions about maybe other resources that we're missing?
Not so much on the resource end, but I was gonna ask you, Jay, because I know we were talking about this sophomore junior year, when it comes to taking some of the classes that are listed as optional on the pre-med list. And I know every school has kind of a different list, and also each of the schools you're applying to has a different list of what they require. So I know you did end up taking MAM-Phys and biochemistry, Sam. I think you did biochem as well. So what was the process there? How did you guys decide that you were going to take it, and what was the debate there? And did it help when you were taking the MCAT? Was it worthwhile?
Yeah, so for me personally, I'm a bioengineering major, so MAM-Phys was already in my curriculum as a class I had to take, and That's one of the classes that I would definitely recommend taking no matter what, since it really just gives you a better in-depth overview of all the bodily systems, which play a pretty big role on the MCAT, since that's probably at least a third of the bio section, if not more, or related content. And then when it comes down to some of the other classes that are a little bit more optional, like psych and soc, those are two that'll be very helpful. But when it comes down to really like the MCAT, it's all content that you'll be able to self-teach yourself. It's not very complicated content. It's really just a matter of putting in the time on your own. But if you do have the room in your schedule, I definitely recommend taking all of the recommended classes, because they all really are helpful and will help you have a better base of knowledge for later on.
Yeah, just to add on to what Sam said, I totally agree. Psychology and sociology are not, I would say, required classes to do on the MCAT, but medical schools may want to see you take those classes for whatever requirements they have. I would say you 1,000% need to take biochem before you take the MCAT. The MCAT is very biochem heavy, and it shows up in the chem phys section, in the bio section. It just kind of plays into almost every section. So it's really important to take biochem seriously whenever you take it. Phys, I agree with Sam. It's not 1,000% necessary for the MCAT, but if you want to be a doctor and this is like stuff that you're interested in, like it's definitely like a good class to take. You get to learn a lot about like the heart and all the different types of systems and like in depth, which definitely helps you as like a kind of like an initial content review for the MCAT. So yeah, I definitely recommend taking it, especially if you're pre-med, like you're gonna have to learn these things eventually. So that's kind of my thought process.
I guess I could add something from my perspective. I know, Jay, I think you're psych and neuroscience, and then Sam, you just said you're bioengineering, right? And so for me, I took something, I'm a business major. So I kind of took a major that wasn't related at all to the coursework in any way. And so taking those optional classes for me was like a big question mark, because I would have had to take that in the summer and the winter on top of everything that I already had to do. I was already taking, at least 6 credits per winter or summer semester just to keep up, because it doesn't overlap at all. So that's something to consider if you're thinking of majoring in something that doesn't correlate at all with the pre-med track.
Yeah, totally hear that. As a psychology major, not many of my classes overlap. But I did have the benefit of being able to take like psychology and some of those background classes that were not required for pre-med. So I hear that. Are we good to move on, Sam, or you wanted to add something?
No, we're good to move on.
Okay, I think we're just gonna move on to talking about like getting ready to apply and how I guess undergrads kind of get into that process. So I guess I can start. I think most schools nowadays, if you are in contact with your pre-med advisors, they have something called the oh my God, I'm forgetting the word. The cover, what is it called, Sam? The packet, what's it called?
Oh, I don't know the official name of the packet, but it's basically just you fill out everything about yourself so that the pre-health office knows everything about you.
Yeah, I totally just blanked, but it's you basically fill out these essays that you write to your pre-med office that help that you tell them who you are, what you've done, the kind of experiences you've had, your demographics, like significant experiences you've had, and X, Y, and Z, and like they compile it for you and send like a packet of these essays to med schools, and like that's kind of like your first introduction to the med schools. So usually, at least in Maryland, where we all are, it was due like early February. So it's really important that when the packet opens, you jump on it so that you can start filling it out. You want to do a good job filling it out as like you're representing yourself. So you want to get an early jump on it. You don't want to save it for last minute. If you guys want to add anything.
No, I agree with all you said. I think Maryland does a really good job at trying to give you deadlines and all to follow, and I think it's very important to keep up with them, since otherwise you're really only making more work for yourself in the end. And I think
Mhm.
another important thing that a lot of people kind of skip over or don't think about as they're doing everything is, as you're doing all of your experiences, whether it be research or clinical stuff, it's always important to kind of keep like a little diary or document here and there about what these experiences mean to you and how they've impacted you, because eventually you're going to have to write your personal statement saying why you want to be a doctor. And you can't just say, I want to help people, because that's not really an answer that they're looking for. They want something that's really deep and meaningful. And for my experiences, like after I would do something, or if I really just had like a aha moment while I was either like writing as an EMT or doing something with research, I think it's always important to write those down, whether it just be your thoughts or something longer. It's going to really pay off in the end, because you're going to get to reflect on everything as a whole.
And then I would say, in terms of someone who's taking a gap year, like if you're considering that, I got in touch with my pre-med advisor, and I wanted to ensure that all of these resources would still be available for me post-grad, which I think is really important to check with your school if you don't go to UMD, or with your personal advisor, to see if those resources will still be available to you after you graduate.
Yeah, to add on to that point, it's really important to like keep up to date with your pre-med office and make sure that you're on time for deadlines, and they're really there to help you. They want you to get into medical school. So it's set up a meeting, meet with them, make sure you're on schedule. A 5-minute meeting can really help you in the future, especially if like you're late on anything, and just good to meet with them. I just wanted to add something that Sam said about like your personal statement. It's very important. Like personal statement is a very big deal. And so it's really important again to get an early start on it. You're going to be rewriting it and writing it and rewriting it multiple times. So understanding that you have to go through this writing process to try and make it as effective and as well written as possible, and make sure that you have like a good significant explanation of why you want to be a doctor. You can write that you just want to help people, but you got to give a little more than just everyone that's applying to med school hopefully wants to help people. So you got to explain why you're different and why you think you're ready to do that. So yeah, definitely take your time writing it and make sure you start early, because you will be rewriting it multiple times. And then last thing I'll say is some essays to, I think some essays that are going to be coming out soon is there's always a diversity essay, which is asking you like, how are you different than everyone else? What can you bring to the table? And it's really important to think about these things from an early standpoint so that you can really try and differentiate yourself out of the mix. And then the second question, I mean, we were in college during COVID, so it's always important to think about like what you did over COVID and how you overcame challenges during the COVID pandemic. So definitely start thinking about these things if you're early. And yeah.
So another thing I actually want to touch on, it's kind of taking a step back from this, is just the idea of us taking a gap year. A lot of people do it for many reasons, but I think that's something that a lot of students don't consider or want to do when they come into school, because they kind of just want to get it all done with and become a doctor as soon as possible. But from my experiences, I know personally, like I figured it would be good to be able to have a year to be able to mature more, be able to have an experience outside of school that could also be meaningful. As well as for me, I just wanted to be able to pursue other interests like going abroad. So I had to push everything back a year. And I think that there's a stigma around a gap year that leads a lot of people to not want to take it. So what made you guys want to take your gap years?
So for me, and I will add on to what Sam said, like I know my parents and like people around me were like pushing like worry that like, once you take a gap, like once you stop studying, it'll be so hard to get back into it. Like, and I'm even considering 2 gap years. And I like want to emphasize the fact that it's not a bad thing, and like you need to know yourself. You need to know if you're going to be able to go and study again once you get back, and you're going to be dedicated. And a big part of it is just being really committed to the process and to being pre-med. And I think in general, it's something that you have to be really committed to ahead of time. It's not something you put yourself through if you're not 100% sure. So that's really important. And then I think again, like what Sam said, like we are young and we're graduating, and there's still things that I want to experience personally before heading right back into school. And definitely emphasizing that that's not a bad thing. And so you kind of just have to do what feels right to you.
In my experience, I just wasn't ready to apply, and that's either because I was taking so many classes and I would have to throw the MCAT. I had to take it a year earlier while I was taking biochem. I had to study for it, and I was doing this extracurricular and that extracurricular, and I wanted some time to really focus on my extracurriculars. I work, as I said earlier, I work in a neurobiology lab, which requires a lot of time, and I'm writing a thesis right now, which I'm like really proud of. But I wouldn't have been able to do all of that if I had to go straight from college to medical school. Additionally, I didn't like the idea of going straight from school to school. I think like taking a year off, getting a new perspective on medicine. I'm not exactly sure what I'm doing yet in my gap year. I'm right now applying to jobs, but something along the lines of like a medical assistant, a scribe, working as like a technician in X, Y, and Z place. Like these are all going to give me more opportunities to learn about patient care and maybe give me a new perspective on medicine and a new outlook. Um, and something that I really look forward to and really want to experience before I go into medical school. So yeah, those were my reasons.
Yeah, I think those are two other great reasons. I mean, there's really no such thing as a bad reason, and I think it's all going to pay off. And just another thing going off what Jason said is it's always great to get more patient care experience from the doctor that I shadowed. He used to always love to say medicine is an art and a science, and they can't teach you the art in school. And I've really learned that to be very true. A lot of people don't really focus on the bedside manner or interpersonal skills of being a doctor or consider that, which sometimes could hurt them later on. That's why I think it's a great thing that you want to help work on that right now.
I also think adding on to what Jason said a little bit, like you can have a plan ahead of time. Like coming into school, I had a plan that I was going to go straight to medical school. But when it comes down to it, these classes are hard and the stress does get to you and you're taking a lot and you also want to be a student. Like you want to like have fun and have time for those extracurriculars. So I think for me, accepting that like releasing that pressure of not having to go immediately really helped me also in terms of my learning because you don't want to rush everything. You genuinely want to internalize these things and know them because they're important and you're going to need them. And so I think that's important.
I think we're gonna start closing out soon, and we'll end with this last question. What is some advice that like what is the number one advice you would give someone who's either like starting the pre-med process or like is in the pre-med process right now? What is like in hindsight, after all said and done, we can look back and say this about the process.
I guess I'll kick this one off. But one of the things that I think is most important is to not get too caught up in the schoolwork and making sure you're doing everything for med school all at once. Like when you get to college, it's a big change. And I think a lot of people don't always take the time to appreciate it. It's 4 years of your life that are going to be like nothing else. So my piece of advice would really be to enjoy your time, still take school and everything very seriously, but don't dedicate everything into your schoolwork because you're still a person. So you got to find that nice balance, which takes some time and trial and error. But once you find it, it really pays off and it will make you a better student and doctor all around later on.
I would say that for me, I'm like sort of like that perfectionist personality. And so coming into school, I was very stressed about every single little grade. And I would like destroy myself over it. Like, God forbid I would get like something below a 90 or something like that. Like it would really get to me. And I think what I've learned from the last 4 years and what I would tell people who kind of struggle with the same thing is that one grade in your entire thing will most likely not like not change whether you're getting into medical school or not. And I think that's really important because you shouldn't have to stress. I know stress really got to me throughout this entire process and like it's something that you have to learn to deal with. And learning that one grade isn't really going to impact your entire life can help you kind of stabilize that or begin to.
Yeah, and I guess the last things I will say is that I liked what Sam said. We're like, or Sapir said it also, like have a balance of like your life and like start slow in the MCAT process. and like be able to try and balance everything. It's tough at first, but once you get the hang of it, then I would start increasing your course load. Additionally, just like I know it sucks and it's stressful and it's anxiety like inducing, but like try to stay on schedule with everything. Try to have somewhat of a plan just so that you have something to stick to. And the plan can change, which is fine, but try to have one. And then most importantly, what I would say is be more than a pre-med student. Like the pre-med student shouldn't be what defines you. Like have extracurriculars or have like hobbies that you love and have outside of just taking like your pre-med classes or just outside of just studying for the MCAT. Like definitely be yourself, like have fun and like enjoy life while you're also pre-med. Is a big takeaway I would have. So with that, I want to thank everyone for listening to our podcast over the last 4 years. Sam, anything you want to say?
Just thank you for everyone who listened. It's always been a great time recording these with Jason and Sapir, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys are going to do in the future.
Same here. Thank you for listening, and I hope that you guys can take something from what we're sharing and for it to help you in some way, even in the smallest way. That would make a difference to all of us.
Yeah, last thing I'll say is if anyone wants to reach out or has questions about anything, please leave a comment at the bottom of the YouTube video and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. And thank you, and hopefully everyone's successful and have a great one.
Thank you. Bye.